Hey guys, welcome back into the study that we're calling Living on Empty as we go through the Bible's book of Ecclesiastes and talk about the unrealistic expectations that drained men and discovering how God would have you to enjoy life now. In this session, we're talking about when more isn't enough, and we find that Solomon is now chasing more power, more projects, more possessions, and more pleasure. So get your Bible turned over to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to begin there, but we're going to end, if you want to kind of put a marker in this place, we're going to end in 1 Timothy chapter 6. So get your Bible ready at Ecclesiastes 2 and 1 Timothy chapter 6. And let's talk about when more isn't enough. You remember the MasterCard commercials that always kind of went something like this? Luxury vacation, $4,000. Five-star dinner, $300. Front row tickets to your favorite band, $500. And then it would always end with kind of a line like this: memories with the ones you love, priceless. And then kind of here was the catch line. There are some things that money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. And I think the irony of that commercial is that it's a credit card company that's banking on the fact that you'll go broke trying to disprove the line that there are some things money can't buy. And that's sort of what Solomon finds out in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, that really the one thing he's going after, that's satisfaction, that's enjoyment, money can't buy. And so if Ecclesiastes chapter 2 were a MasterCard commercial, verses 1 through 11, it would kind of go like this. Solomon found that houses, vineyards, parks, and gardens, expensive. Silver, gold, the treasure of kings, extremely expensive. Entertainment, pleasure, sex, status, costly. Spending your whole life chasing meaning in pleasure, projects, power, and possessions. If you look down at verse 11, he'll tell you how priceless it is. He says, I considered that all my hands had done and the toil that I had expended in doing it, and behold, all of it was vanity and striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. He doesn't say it's priceless. He said, I had all that stuff. I went broke going after all that stuff, and in the end, I ended up empty. His unrealistic expectation that he had to have more absolutely not only drained his bank account, but man, it drained him emotionally. And it's drained him spiritually. And I want to reiterate something that we said in the last session, that this study is going to take some humility. Some humility in realizing that not only can you learn from your own mistakes, there's wisdom in doing that, but are you willing and humble enough to learn from someone else's mistakes? There's a lot of examples of other people's mistakes that we can learn from so that you don't repeat them. And we said this in the last session. Solomon crossed the finish line on all the things that you think you have to enjoy life. And he found it empty. Why? Because unrealistic expectations absolutely drained him. And so in this session, we talk about when more isn't enough. I want to walk through those first 11 verses there of Ecclesiastes chapter 2. And I want to point out 3 pursuits that Solomon had and the unrealistic expectations that were underlying all of them, and talk about how each of these things you think you need, but they drain men even today, and they'll drain you if you don't listen to the warning. And then I'm going to flip over to 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we're going to talk about some redemptive ideas of something that Christ would have you to have that'll help you to really liberate yourself from all these unrealistic expectations and find something in your life that'll kind of flip the script and help you get going in the right direction. So let's break these down. 3 unrealistic expectations that Solomon had in this passage. One was the unrealistic expectation of more pleasure. I would describe this one as men saying, if I could just feel that. Look at verses 1 through 3. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. There it is. If I could just feel that. But behold, this was also vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. My heart still guided me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. He said, man, I wanted to really enjoy life, so I went after all the pleasures that I see other people indulging. And he said, I found that all of them just kind of left me empty. And that's kind of where a lot of men are. Man, if I could just have that, if I could feel that, boy, then I would be happy. And we want to scratch that itch. And that comes honestly because you are hardwired to feel great. You have desires. You have things in your body and your brain that want pleasure. And here's my question to you. Hasn't God created you? God has given you that desire for pleasure. And I can say this about every man who's watching this video. Men desire lots of different things. And in a room of men, when I first taught this lesson with our men here at Liberty, there were over 60 men in the room. There's a lot of different things that guys want in that room. But I guarantee you this, 100% of men want to be happy. We all want to be happy. Why? Because God has hardwired you with that desire. And here's kind of a key, and I want you to file this away because we're going to talk about this in a future session. But listen, if you will, God gave you the desire for pleasure, and the key to understanding Ecclesiastes is not that it's wrong to desire pleasure. The key to understanding Ecclesiastes is that we put our ultimate pleasure in things that cannot possibly satisfy. And one of the interpretive keys to this book is Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 24, where he says, there's nothing better for a person that he should eat, drink, and find enjoyment in his toil. He says, man, that's really what we all want, is to enjoy a day at work, to enjoy a day with our family, to enjoy every day of our lives. But listen to the last part of the line. He says, this also I saw is from the hand of God. Hey, listen, guys, ultimately pleasure is a gift of God. And so there's two authors that I want to kind of quote some things that they say on this idea of pleasure isn't wrong. The problem is that we just try to fulfill that desire for pleasure in a man's life in the wrong places. One of them is Pastor John Piper. And he says this, we are all hardwired for happiness. He said, the problem is not that our desires are too strong, but that they are too weak. And that's sort of what Solomon is saying. Man, he is taking this strong desire for pleasure, but he's putting it kind of in weak things. And he's not really desiring the ultimate pleasure, and that is the pleasure that only you can receive as a gift from God. And then C.S. Lewis says it like this. It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. And man, Solomon was the ultimate mud pie maker. If I read that and you're like, man, I don't really understand what C.S. Lewis is saying that, he's saying it's like this. Imagine a little boy, 6, 7, 8 years old, and you remember being a little boy at that age, man, all you want to do is go outside and get dirty, right? He said, so imagine a little boy who's out in the ditch and he's just playing with mud. And you come by and you tell that little boy, hey, little boy, I want to give you an all-expenses trip, you and your family. I'm going to pay for you guys to go on a cruise anywhere in the world you want to go. One, that little boy's going to look at you like you're weird. Right? The other thing that little boy's going to do is he's going to look, you know how your dog looks at you sometimes and tilts its head? That's probably how the little boy's going to look at you because he don't know what a cruise is. He doesn't know how expensive it is. He don't know how valuable it is. And he's going to go right back to just playing with the mud that's right there in the ditch because that's what he desires. What he doesn't realize is that he could desire and have so much more than this really cheap thing. And listen, guys, whenever you try to fulfill all your pleasures in the world, that hard wiring for happiness in chasing all the pleasures of the world, it's almost like God is saying, man, I'll offer you an all expense paid experience in real pleasure. And it's like we just kind of look back at the mud and say, I'd rather play with this. And that's exactly what Solomon says. He said, I chased all the things that I see men and people trying to do to enjoy their life. And I just found it emptiness. And one of the reasons of that is because we're trying to just fulfill the pleasures of our body and our brain. And man, it's a dopamine hit and it's an endorphin hit. And once you have it, you just want more of it. And whatever that is that you're trying to do, we know that can lead to a lot of addictive behaviors. And I'm not going to list them all because, boy, you could just put them out there right in front of you. And you probably struggle with some of those. And you know the cycle. You want it, you feel it, and then you feel guilty. And you don't want to do it again. But what happens tomorrow? Your body and your brain, one more time, wants that same endorphin rush, that same dopamine hit. And you know what? Before long, you got to have it a little bit more intense because it doesn't satisfy like it once did. And man, before long, men find themselves just muddy, drained, dirty from the world, caught in a cycle of darkness and guilt that they really hate, but they don't know how to get out of. And here's what's really going on there, guys, is, man, that your body and your brain get the endorphin hit and the dopamine hit, but your soul, your spirit is starving. Your spirit wants something lasting. Your spirit wants someone satisfying that can really give them the pleasures that they need, and that only comes as a gift from God. Solomon hasn't figured that out yet, but he's on his way there, and I hope that you are too. So one is the unrealistic expectation of pleasure. Let's talk about the second one that we find in this passage, and that's the unrealistic expectation of projects. And it's the idea, if I could master that, if I could do that. Look at verses 4-6, and boy, here goes Solomon listing all of his projects. He said, I made great works, I built houses, planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks, planted them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest and growing trees. He said, man, I got into architecture. I got into craftsmanship. I got into construction. I got into horticulture. I planted me an orchard. I figured out how to what. Man, can you just hear that guy trying to master all these things? And boy, he just goes head first into all those projects. And I want you to think about how very much that is the nature of a man. To figure out how to fish, to figure out how to hunt, to figure out how to, if it's fitness, how to become the peak level of fitness, to figure out how to become a absolute incredible scratch golfer. I mean, you can go down the list of all, men building things, fixing things, refurbishing things, men kind of find an escape in all these things. And that's exactly what happened to Solomon. He said, I built it all, bought it all, mastered it all. But it was still just chasing after the wind. Why is that? Because here's the deal, guys, and I want to warn you about something. I want to warn you that you not make a mistress out of your hobbies and lose your family. And boy, I see it happening to a lot of men, making a mistress out of your hobbies and losing your family. And here's what I mean by that. Whether it's an escape to the shed, whether it's an escape to the driving range, man, I ride a bicycle a lot. I work out a lot. Whether it's, man, I'm just going to get on that bike. I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to go out there every day and I'm going to just crush it on the road, or I'm going to crush it on the mountain. I'm going to get an elevation gain today or whatever. Sometimes in a man's mind, that's an escape, because here's the deal. A man can master that stuff and there's no conflict. A man can master that stuff. There's no argument. All he is trying to better himself. But man, when you get home, sometimes those things to work on with your wife they're more complicated. The issues that you have to deal with your kids, they take more of an investment of your time. It actually takes sacrifice. And so I I want to really warn you guys, and man, I see this even in Christian men. We make a mistress out of our hobbies and we lose our families. In the end, you crush your goals. In the end, you build all kinds of cool things in the shed. In the end, you became a scratch golfer. But in the end, you were never home there for your kids. In the end, your marriage is empty. Your wife is disengaged. And that's kind of where Solomon is man, he spent all that time doing all those things, and he found out in the end he had nothing. And so projects can become an unrealistic expectation. And then the last one we're going to talk about in Ecclesiastes 2 here is power. If I could just be that. Look at verses 7 through 11 here, and check out what's going on here. He says, I bought male and female slaves. I had slaves who were born in my house. I had great possessions, herds and flocks, more than anyone who had been before me in Jerusalem. I gathered for myself silver, gold, treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, many concubines, the delight of the sons of men. I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem, and my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept from my heart no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and all this was a reward from my toil. And then verse 11, he talks about, man, it was empty. It was chasing the wind. Let me help you understand this in the historical context. One, when he talks about the male and female servants and the singers and all those kind of things, those are the things that ancient kings would do in order to multiply their status. And if you had more of those things in your kingdom under your rule and authority, it gave you more power when you compared yourself to other kings. And so that's all those different things that Solomon is doing. He's just multiplying a display of his power and of his wealth in front of other people. And I want you to think about how a man might do that today. You may be thinking, you know what? I'm working at this job, and right now I'm just kind of in here for myself. But one of these days, I'm going to have 5 people working under me. One of these days, I'm going to have 25 people working under me. And man, you're just going after the promotions, because with every promotion, you're an authority over more and more people, and it gives you status. But at some point, it's never enough, because once you're over 50 people, you want to be over 100. And you know what you have when you move from being over 50 people to being over 100? All you have is 50 more problems than you had before. Because, man, just working with and especially trying to administrate people, it's tough. And if you put your status and your identity in that kind of power of, man, look at all the people I'm over, man, you're just going to find yourself empty. Solomon multiplied singers. Some of you are trying to multiply followers on social media. You're doing everything you can to garner response and attention from other people. In the end, it's going to leave you empty. Man, Solomon said, hey, I was the best. He said, there was nobody great. He said, I surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Are you one of those guys who always has to be the best, always has to have the best? When I mean be the best, you ever been around one of those guys, or are you one of those guys you can't ever just do anything for fun? It's always like real serious, and you got to win. If you don't win, you just walk off and sulk, and you don't talk to anybody for days. You go out to the city tennis courts and you act like it's Wimbledon, right? It's just your dudes that you're playing with. Man, to be around that guy that's always got to win because he put his worth in that, he's not really enjoying anything. And listen, man, all you're doing is winding up empty. You ever been around the guy who has to have all the best stuff? He can't just buy a motorcycle. It has to be this unbelievably the best motorcycle that he's researched and bought and put all these upgrades on. You can't just have a truck. It's got to be the best truck. He can't just have wheels. It's got to be the best wheels. Can't just have golf clubs. It's got to be the best golf clubs that they're possibly out there they can buy. And he buys those golf clubs this year, and then he turns around next year. He gets rid of them because they're last year's thing, and man, he spends another unbelievable chunk of money to get that. And listen, guys, this may be offensive to you, but I want to tell you, if you are that guy, no, you're not impressing anybody. As a matter of fact, your friends are probably looking at you and they laugh about the way you've always got to be the best and always got to have the best. That guy who's got to have all the gear. Listen, man, you can fill your garage full of that stuff, and it's just going to leave you empty. That's what Solomon's saying. He said, I was the best. He said, I had all the best. I tried to be that guy, and I figured out I wasn't that guy. And you know what Solomon's biggest problem is kind of comes right here in verse 10. He says, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was a reward for my toil. Solomon's biggest problem is what a lot of men's biggest problem is. Their biggest problem is they can't tell themselves no. You can't stop yourself. You feel like no is a defeat. You feel like no is deflating. And so, man, whatever you want, whatever you see, you got to have it, and you can't tell yourself no. And in the end, you lose self-control. And in the end, you go broke, like MasterCard's banking on, that you'll figure out. You can have the greatest tennis racket, all the great golf clubs. You can have the rims on the truck just like you want it. But there are some things money can't buy. But you're broke trying. Solomon says, I couldn't figure it out. So now let's go over to 1 Timothy chapter 6, and let's end right here. And this is really important, guys. The reason I want to flip over to 1 Timothy chapter 6 is because so far what Solomon says is not very redemptive. He's really not pointing us to Christ because he's not quite there yet. He's going to get there. But I do want to end on this note right here. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, and this kind of mirrors some of the things we just found out. Listen to this. But godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. The gift that Christ wants to give you, if you will put your ultimate desires for pleasure in him, to please him, to take pleasure in him so that he can help you to really enjoy all the things that you have in this life. Godliness with contentment is great gain. He wants to give you the gift of contentment. And he kind of goes into, he says, for we brought nothing into this world, and here's the perspective, and we can take nothing out of this world. Man, all those golf clubs you bought, that great truck that you have, all the cool things that you crush, it ends up being absolutely nothing. He says, we have food and clothing. With these we'll be content. Man, just be content with what you got. But those who desire to be rich fall into a temptation, into a snare. It becomes a trap. Into many senseless and harmful desires, they plunge people into ruin and destruction. You lose your family over your hobby. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It is through that craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many pangs. Boy, you'll pay in the end if you don't bring it into balance. I'm going to say something else that, you remember I talked about how a dog kind of tilts its head? I'm going to say something make you kind of tilt your head, but I want you to think about this. You can't really enjoy anything that you're not willing to lose. You can't really enjoy anything that you're not willing to lose. Now, what do I mean by that? Two things. One, Jesus said this. If you're going to save your life, what do you got to do? You got to lose it for his sake. Christ, I'm trusting my future, my care and control into your hands, right? And then this is the other thing. Listen, I'm not minimizing the pain of loss. Man, loss is hard. Loss is part of the curse of things. Boy, it's this world that we live in where there's death and decay and loss and separation. It's hard to lose family. It's your home burns down. It's hard to lose a home. It's hard, man. Your car breaks down. It's aggravating. I'm not minimizing any of that kind of stuff, but I am challenging you on this. You got to keep it in perspective. Because have you ever been that guy or met that guy who said, man, this is my life. Golf is my life. Hunting is my life. My job is my life. Be careful with this one. Even my family is my life. So, man, my girls have both grown up. Man, they're doing really good. They're adulting now, right? But you know what? They grew up in my home, and man, then they went, right? And I knew one of these days, so it wasn't my goal to keep them. My goal was to launch them. And I want to tell you, in being willing to lose them, it really helped me to enjoy the time that I had with them while they were in my home. I want you to think about this with your wife. Your wife is your life. Boy, if you make something your life, you will do everything you can to keep it. And it's kind of like this. When you keep it, all you're going to do is crush it, and you're going to stress out about it. And you know what, man, if I put my happiness in her and all of what I want is dependent on her, boy, that's going to crush her. But you know what? If I realize, man, any day, man, my health could change, her health could change. Tomorrow may not be like today. If I realize, boy, tomorrow everything could be lost, you know what it helps me to do today? Really put aside a whole lot of things that I'd really like to gripe at and bark about and be stressed about. And just go through today going, man, we're married today. We love each other today. Today's a good day. And when I see my wife today, man, I'm going to love her and enjoy her because, man, I realize tomorrow I could lose it. And you can go through anything in your life like that, guys. Contentment. Contentment with godliness is great gain. Just entrusting it to Christ and being able to say, ultimately, eternally, I just want to please you. And then turning around and looking around and thinking, hey, listen, man, of all these pleasures that I'm trying to enjoy, God, the things that you give me to enjoy every day, I'm going to take delight in because you've given them to me. And boy, it's good for me to have today, but it's not ultimate for my life because my first pleasure's in Him. I'm going to guard my heart. I'm going to live a godly life. I'm going to be careful not to just take the endorphin hit and the dopamine hit and forget the starving part of my soul that wants more than anything in this world could ever have. Projects, the escape to the shed and all that stuff, the making your hobby your mistress. You know what? If you think about this, man, God, you've given me my family today. I want to work on that. God, you've got some things in my character today. I want to work on that. You can enjoy. Hey, listen, I tell our guys all the time, every man needs something to look forward to, but you got to keep it in the right perspective. And then, man, the power that you're looking for. You know, the real power, the man you want to be is Christ. The real resurrection power is in Him. And so Paul says, man, don't get caught in the trap of running after all these things that are only going to cause you pain. Solomon described it as this. It was just empty in the end. And so now we got a lot to talk about, a lot to consider about these unrealistic expectations of chasing these things. As always, this is designed, man, for you to listen to the lesson. I know we talked a little bit longer today in this one, but I think it's really important in what we've covered in this session. It's going to set us up for some future ones. But get around a table now with men. We have some discussion questions for you that are attached to however you're watching or finding this content. Don't just do this alone, but get in a group with other guys and talk about it and grow in your relationship with Christ. So thanks for watching this session, and I will see you next time in session 3 on Living on Empty.